So shifting gears into the message this morning, you can turn in your Bible, if you've got it, to Matthew chapter 6. We're going to be looking at a pair of parables this morning that kind of go back to back. And it's just, you can't write this stuff, but on the order of service, there was a misprint. I don't think it made it into the bulletin, but it says the title of the sermon has to do with the pear of great price. We're actually talking about a pearl, but if you drop the L off, it sounds like a very expensive Bartlett that is just, we're going to be looking at a couple of very short sort of one-line stories that Jesus tells. Sorry, not Matthew 6, Matthew 13. I read the wrong, thank you for mumbling that loud enough for me to hear. Matthew chapter 13 is where you want to go. And I'm going to be honest, this was a wrestle this week, prepping for this, because as is often the case, the parables themselves they're not hard to understand. It's just sometimes really hard to do what they're asking, right? Jesus just lays it out, and it's not like, oh man, I've got to really sift through for clues. Sometimes it's just, there it is. And to be honest, what I was wrestling with this week is the fact that my heart loves the wrong things. My internal sense of how valuable a thing is, how much a thing is worth, is naturally skewed. My instincts don't lead me in the right way. Sometimes I can get it right, depending on the thing, but when it comes to things that really matter, I am frustratingly, almost comically, easily misled. I put the wrong value on things, and I don't think I'm alone in that, but I didn't really appreciate having the spotlight on it this week. But just so you know, as we jump into this, if you're like, wow, I feel like you're sort of talking about my heart too, I'm not subjecting you to anything in God's word that I've not actually having to chew on all week myself here. But this is a problem that Jesus understood about our hearts as humans. And so many times he addresses various aspects of this. Today we're going to look at these two short parables. One is about the hidden treasure, and the other is about the costly pearl. In Matthew chapter 13, verses 44 to 66. And just to put it out there like a bit of a spoiler alert, I think the main idea of these, I'm not being unfair to summarize it as saying that the kingdom of heaven, and we'll talk a little bit about exactly what that means, but the rule and reign of Christ, the kingdom of heaven, is far more valuable than anything a person could give up in order to get it. Kind of doesn't matter what you would have to give up. The kingdom of heaven is far more valuable than whatever we have. We don't always see it that way, but Jesus insists that this is the case. So I'm going to read these like three verses 44, or just two verses, 44 to 46 here in Matthew chapter 13. It's Jesus speaking in the context of he's giving a bunch of parables here. And he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and then covered up. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, on finding one pearl of great value, went out and sold all that he had and bought it. So these are very parallel kind of stories, right? They both feature a person and them coming across some kind of treasure and then having to sell everything they have to getting it. And it's, as many of the parables we looked at, the stories themselves would have been instantly relatable to people in the first century. We might have some questions. Like, I've never met, to my knowledge, a pearl merchant. Maybe you're here and you're a pearl merchant. I would love to hear your story about how that goes for you. And the first one is even more vague, right? Because like a treasure hidden in a field, like what is it? Was a person out there with a metal detector? What's going on? Without camping too much in that, like the first one, the idea of a treasure hidden in a field, for most of human history, there weren't banks. So if you had amassed wealth in some kind of convertible liquid currency form, gold coins, something like that, precious stones, you could carry them around with you, or you could put them in your house, or you could bury them somewhere. Because having somebody steal them was an ever-present thing. Like imagine if you were a person with some net worth, and instead of having your money in a bank account, like you had to carry it in cash in your pocket all the time. Oh, it's payday, and before the bills, it's like, oh man, I've got it, right? Like that'd be super inconvenient. And for the impulse spenders among us, a nightmare, right? But the thing is, people would bury stuff, bury treasure, bury their wealth, put it in the ground to come back later, and then either forget about it or get sick and die, and they forgot to write it down. They would just, they're digging around, they're like, I can't remember where I buried that. And so I think the picture here is someone who, without necessarily searching for, he's working in a field that he doesn't own, maybe he's just an employee, and I don't know, digging, plowing something, thunk, what's that? And it's treasure. In both cases, we have this idea of the person then going away and getting the money to acquire it. In the first case, he buries it back up, and then he goes and offers the owner of the field, hey, I'm really interested in your field. Pretty clearly doesn't mention your field full of gold. It's like, no, it's just a field. So I want to buy the field, and he's trying not to freak out and twitch. It's like, why are you so interested? I'm just really suddenly interested in being a small-time landowner, and that field is really, that back field, like it doesn't even drain that well. Yeah, no, that's the one. I just really would like it, and he doesn't have the money for it. It's not an impulse purchase. He has to go and sell everything. Sell his house, sell his mule. His wife is like, what are you talking about, right? It's like one of those Jack and the Beanstalk moments. It's like, you're selling everything for that field? Like, what is it, full of magic beans? You just wait. I'll show you, right? The second is sort of parallel. This guy is a merchant. He's looking for pearls, but when he finds one that he perceives is worth a lot, same thing. He goes and sells everything that he has. The shape of this sermon is a little bit different here, but I want to look at some things that these have in common, just sort of 3 sections, and see how it applies to us. So Jesus, obviously in a parable, he's talking about something that is difficult to see, difficult to perceive, difficult to put a price tag on, the kingdom of heaven, the rule and reign of God. And he says, it is like these physical things that we can understand. So just to be clear, he's not giving advice saying, hey, if you want to listen to me and my wisdom and do what I do, you're going to go around digging up your neighbor's field, and if you find something good, bury it and go in. Like these aren't the suggestions. He's saying, kingdom of heaven is worth pursuing and acquiring and getting a hold of, regardless of the cost. But there's some aspects to this that get unveiled in these little stories. First is the idea of seeking and finding. In both of these stories, the treasure, the pearl, the thing of value was not super obvious. It could be missed. It could be overlooked. Quite specifically, in the first story, the treasure is hidden, and he uncovers it. I think it implies it's buried of some sort, and then he reburies it. But even in the second case, right, this is a person who is used to the pearl market. He searches, he knows where to go. Maybe he's got a traveling circuit, go down to this coast and then see if these guys have anything good. And it's like, then he finds this one pearl, and maybe it's not in the usual spots. Maybe it's not on the open auction for everybody. It sounds like it's a little bit of a chance, right? Finding this pearl. One aspect of the kingdom of heaven that I think is counterintuitive to us, but Jesus emphasizes it time and again, is that the kingdom of heaven itself in this stage of world history, in the world as we know it, it can be missed, it can be overlooked. We can think about it theoretically, but it can be right in front of us and we can walk right by. Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, Jesus says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." This principle that, man, the right way is going to be obvious. The kingdom of heaven, that sounds glorious. You can't miss it, right? If I just follow the crowd, I'll end up at the right spot. And Jesus says it's not like that. There's a hiddenness to it. It can be overlooked. The kingdom of heaven at this stage doesn't impose itself on us. I say at this stage. Next week, we're going to be talking about another pair of short parables that talk about the small beginnings of the kingdom. But the kingdom of heaven, being united with God through Christ, being a part of that kingdom, is something that is not by default, and it's easy to overlook. The next aspect of these stories that I want us to see is that it doesn't involve just finding, but there's evaluating and deciding. And I think this is more the tricky part. In both cases, the person, the unnamed character in these stories, finds the thing and then assesses its value. And specifically compares its value with their net worth, right? Like, could I afford this? What if I sold everything to get it? That can be the tricky part. It can be tricky for us even in real life. An illustration that came to my mind while I was kind of puzzling through this is the idea of storage unit auctions. There's a show, I've not seen the show, I've heard of it, that was on called Storage Wars. But it's a real thing, right? So in case you're like, what are you talking about? Apparently, if you rent a storage unit to store stuff in and then stop paying them, there is, you'll probably get warnings and letters and phone calls, but legally what happens if you just default is that the owner of the storage unit will come and change the lock, put their lock on it, that they now own that stuff. But they've learned long ago, it's like, I have no need of this person's junk. Most of the time, a person's going to stop paying. It's like, they would have come back and get the important stuff. There's going to be an old mattress. There's always a lamp, like one of the tall ones, right? Garbage bags full of clothing, cardboard boxes that you think, this has treasure. It does not. Old tax forms and stuff, right? But what they have done, and it's become a thing, is that people will auction because it's almost gambling. It's like a surprise, right? So they will open the thing and take a picture, or you can look, but you can't go through. They don't list, this is what it contains. It's like, here, unit number 17. It's like a 5 by 10 unit. Take a look. What'll you bid? I'll give you $50. I'll give you $100. I'll give you, right? And some of them can go for a lot if they're big, and you can see, I think there's a motorcycle back there. But people bid. The owner of the storage unit just wants the junk out of there, get some money. It's not probably going to cover the missing rent, but hey, great. And if you win the bid, it's yours. You got to get it out of there. You can go in and be like, actually, I don't want this stuff. It's like, well, you have two options. Put it in your truck and get out of here, or I can rent you this storage unit. It's already in there. There was a story that was reported in 2018. I did a little bit of digging, but I have a sticker on my monitor, stop chasing rabbits. So I only followed it so far. I cannot fully verify because it's got some aspects of an urban legend, but it was at least reported on a couple of actual newspapers. That back in 2018, a man bought the contents of an abandoned storage locker. I think his winning bid was $500. And upon digging through there, he found a safe hidden in the back. Under the junk, there was a safe, and it was locked, but when he got it open, it had several $1 million in cash. Now, versions of the story vary about what happens if you end up with a bunch of cash. But that's the dream, right? That's the kind of story, that's the reason the lottery companies will have a picture of the person with the ginormous check, $17 gazillion. Look, that schmuck won all, like that, it could happen to me, right? Statistically, the things in the storage unit auction, it's junk, right? You might be able to find some stuff if you're really good at selling things or fixing things, great. But what if, imagine a scenario where somehow you knew the person or you saw a thing, you had information that the other people that were there, they're just bidding on all kinds of ones. They're just doing this. It's what they do. It's like garage selling. But you went because you know when locker number 17 comes up, I know there's a safe full of cash in there. You can't see it, but if you knew that was the case, you would bid, right? And you wouldn't be outbid. If you were smart, you wouldn't come in too hot because people would be like, what's going on, right? But you just keep, maybe people are looking at you and dropping out. Maybe someone's like, this person must know something and they're gonna go. But you're making phone calls. You're like, second mortgage, actually just take the house. Do you want my car? Right? You're selling off, like you're emptying your kids' education fund and all of that stuff. Your spouse is freaking out, the bank's alarmed, but you'll liquidate anything because you're like, it doesn't matter. If I could sell everything I owned, it would come up to whatever. If it came up to $1 million, it's like, if there's 10 million in here, like I can't lose. I just have to win this auction. And that's kind of the picture in these parables. The problem is, when we hear about the kingdom of heaven, it can feel a little bit like an abandoned storage locker. We can be told that there's value in there, but we can't see it. And so when we're told that there's a cost, like it's worth more, we have a hard time. Even the story that Jesus tells, these two stories, the illustrations he used, they're like material money things, right? They perceived something that had a monetary value. They went and they sold their things to acquire money. They went and bought the treasure at a lower price than it was worth. And then once they acquired the treasure, they made money on it. The kingdom of heaven is not a money question. It's a spiritual thing. And I think our lenses get in the way. We struggle with evaluating and deciding. If we hear about the kingdom of heaven, if we hear that God loves us and he sent his son to die for us, and that when this life is over, whether it's long or short, we can be in heaven. We can enjoy eternity with God in his presence in a way that is like, it's described as being better than we can even imagine, but we can't imagine that, can we? And it's great if we hear about that and it's like, okay, I'll have one. If it's a free add-on, there's no risk, right? If someone's giving out lottery tickets, it's like, great, oh, sure. I've risked nothing. So if I gain anything, I win, and if it turns out to be bust, it's like, well, right? But when we hear that, okay, like what Jesus is offering is of infinite worth, and it's free in that we don't earn it, but it demands everything of us, we struggle. I think part of it is because, as I said, we love the wrong things. We fear the loss of things that we love, and we love the wrong things. On some level, when we perceive that, man, if I am going to put my faith in Christ and he's going to be my Lord and Master, and I am like owned by him, I don't get a say in the matter anymore. It's like, yeah, but I really like this, that I like pursuing whatever, and they can be good things, right? Comfort, wealth, status, power, having people think well of me, having people think I'm smart, being on the right side of the cultural moment I'm in. We can love those things, and when we weigh it out, we're like, but that feels like I'm paying a lot for that. The men in the story never wrestled with that. In fact, in the first one, it's very important. It says he found the treasure, he covered it up, and he went and in his joy sold everything to exchange for it. He wasn't wrestling like, am I going to have buyer's remorse? He's like, for him it was very clear because it's dollars and cents. But when we understand that Jesus is not merely offering us forgiveness, but he's saying, like, you can be forgiven and part of my kingdom, and you're not the king, I am, we can struggle. And I think this leads us, we can tend to slip into seeing, following Jesus, having faith in Jesus, being a person of faith. We wouldn't say it like this, but I wonder if we can sort of slip into this side lane that sees following Jesus essentially as a way to gain things in this world or protect against the loss of things in this world that we love. Sometimes it can be literal wealth, as the prosperity preachers claim. They're like, come to Jesus and you will make money. They're going to have issues. The Bible does not teach what they're teaching, and so that's a dangerous game they're playing. But we can be chasing that, or we can have this idea that if I come to Jesus, if I'm following Jesus, I'll gain, if not literal wealth, maybe physical health, maybe cultural power, maybe even just the assurance that God is on our side as we pursue the things of this world that we like. Almost like people who like fervently pray for their hockey team to win. And it's like, you just figured that God's on your side, not on the other. Like, do you figure it just depends on how many fans on each side are playing? Does God run a scoreboard? What is the thinking there? We can tend to see Jesus as something that comes along and makes my kingdom easier or better or more secure. And that's, again, missing the point, because it's hard to see the things that Jesus is offering. And we tend to love the wrong things. But in addition to seeking and finding and evaluating and deciding, the third part that we see here is joyfully exchanging. They went and sold everything they had and exchanged it for a pearl, or whatever the treasure was in the field, a clay pot full of gold coins, original mint condition bagged and boxed copy of Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, right? Keys to a new truck, whatever, like, got that thing, and they were happy about it. They were joyful. I was in youth ministry for a lot of years before graduating, and both as a paid youth pastor and as a volunteer youth leader. And way back in Ontario, there was a game that we used to play at our youth group, and it's not, we didn't invent it, called Bigger and Better. Have you ever heard of this? It's fun, dangerous now. I'd be like, what are you doing? Because we didn't do it on the internet, we did it live. You start with something small and insignificant, a pencil, a shoelace, and you go up like door to door, go to people and say, will you trade me something bigger and better? And people do. And then, so in youth group, we give everyone like a paper clip or a bottle cap or something and send them out in groups. Wander around the neighborhood. Don't worry, your parents don't care where you are. They know that you're under my supervision. This will be fun. It's all right. There's a young adult leader with you. But then you come back by the right time, and then whoever has the biggest and best thing would win something. And it is nuts what people would come back with. The one group came back with a refrigerator. Like, it ran. It was in the person's garage, where, like, they had, I don't know how many deals they made, and they're like, I'll give you this fridge if you can get it out of here. They went and it was like, oh, my dad's got a trailer, let's come back. And they, like, strapped this fridge down. One group, they could have made more trades, but a girl in the group thought this was the pinnacle. They had one of those stuffed animals you can win at the fair that's like the size of that piano, right? I'm going to win this for my girlfriend. That's a smart move. So this person had this giant pink rabbit, and they got this, and she goes, it's the biggest, it's the best. And they're like, we could trade it for... No, that was... Apparently, in between 2005 and 2006, a Canadian blogger named Kyle MacDonald kind of did an experiment, did it all online. He started with a red paperclip, put a picture of it, bigger and better, what do you give me? And he would travel around. Someone's like, well, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, or whatever, and I'll trade you this. So he'd have to do some traveling, but he did this series of trades, and it was 14 or 15 trades. He's got a website, you can look it up. He started with a red paperclip, he ended up with a house. Now, it was in Saskatchewan. But still, he ended up with like an actual house, bigger and better, right? The idea of that game is like you're exchanging something and it's like, give me something bigger and better. And when they offer you, it's like, I've got a paperclip and they've got a baseball. It's like, yeah, no problem, right? To clarify, Kyle McDonald with the house, he had to get rid of the paper. He had to give up the paperclip. He can't have the paperclip and the house and all the other weird stuff he had in between, including I think there was a snowmobile and a recording contract. It's crazy. Because we like add-ons. We like to have our cake and eat it too. It's a common saying in all kinds of contexts, right? Where it's like, hey, stop saying either or. It's both and. Sometimes it's either or, right? You ever have a crush on two people? That's an either or. Both and, I'm not going to make any jokes about Utah. That's just, it's going to end badly, right? At some point, you have to pick a lane. And with things of importance, with things like the kingdom of heaven, it's not like, oh, I found this pearl, so I got the pearl and I have all my other stuff. It's great. This will go good in my collection. It's like, no, this becomes your collection. You have to exchange. To gain the treasure that is the kingdom of heaven, one must let go of everything else. We see this, but because it's not it's not a financial transaction. It's like, great, so you want to become a Christian? You have to liquidate all your assets and have no money. Some people, I believe, God calls to live a life of voluntary poverty, but it's not, we don't say, oh, the gospel's going to cost you your stuff, but it costs you your love of your stuff, and that becomes harder because it's like, well, I still have to, like, I should wear clothes, right? And how do we navigate this? In Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, Jesus says, no one can serve two masters. He will either hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. You can't serve two masters. A couple of other well-known quotes, they're not from the Bible, but refer to this idea. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in the book Cost of Discipleship, famously says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. Take up your cross, right? But it's not that. It's like, oh, that's going to cost me everything. It's like, yeah, but what are you getting? You gain everything. Another well-known quote that is attributed to the missionary Jim Elliot, there's some evidence that it's much older than that, but he wrote in his journal, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. That's the kind of perspective Jesus is talking about. It's like the kingdom of heaven is not like the boat that you would sell to buy this pearl, or, you know, the investments you would liquidate in order to win the auction for that storage unit because you really want that old treadmill / laundry hanger. What we gain is of infinite, like it's not only of more value, it's of a different kind of value than anything that we could give up. If we see clearly, we understand that. It's like if we even kind of clearly see what Christ is offering, Jesus says we will be like the guys in this story, where it's like, I will joyfully, like, what do I need to give up? Fortunately, the gospel is that, like, it's not about you need to give a certain amount of money to the church. No, we don't sell salvation. If there's a church doing that, they need to stop. Don't do that. We don't have to like give that kind of stuff. But we have to give up our sense of our own security, our sense of our own worth, the sense that I'm good enough to earn God's favor on my own. I'm pretty good at following the rules. I don't need a handout. I don't need mercy and grace. We have to give up our autonomy. Very interestingly, Jesus doesn't say, you know, this pearl, this guy looking for pearls and the treasure in the field, that's like forgiveness of sins. He doesn't say that. He says the kingdom of heaven is like this. Kingdom of heaven. Kingdom means essentially all of the people, places, and things that are owned and controlled by a king. That's what a kingdom is. Kingdom of heaven is that which is controlled by the king, Jesus. When we gain the kingdom, we're not the king. We gain citizenship. We gain a king, the best king. But there are many of us, maybe all of us on some level, that would essentially say, I would rather be my own king living in a cardboard box under a bridge than to be a servant, to be a subject, to have to submit, even if I got to live in the palace full of gold with free Wi-Fi. It's like, nope, I'm my own man. And because that's one of the things we have to give up. It's like, we can't be our own king if Jesus is our king. We can't serve two masters. We're going to hate one and serve the other. But Jesus says that when you see it clearly, it's a joyful exchange. I hope we can see ourselves in this pair of stories. I mentioned earlier, I feel like I can, and it hasn't been all comfortable. But I think we're all in there somewhere. Many, many people here are Christians, people who have heard about Jesus, perceived his worth, and submitted to his kingship. You've said, I want in, I want to be part of that kingdom. I'll give up anything else. Jesus has the signing authority. He's got veto power in my life. He is the boss. But those of us who've been doing that for a while, we can forget. We can be like, is this still super awesome? Or is, we can start to drift into loving the wrong things again. Others here might be like maybe the guy in the first story, the person in the field, not necessarily looking for a life-changing treasure, but you sort of stumbled across it. You kind of thought you were fine until somebody told you, man, like your life is really, you're missing out without Jesus. Maybe you're weighing out the value of submitting to Jesus versus the value of what it would cost you. You're like the man in the field who's looking, and it's like, I can't take this out of the field. Technically belongs to the owner of the field. I have to buy the field. Man, but this is, right? Maybe you're weighing it out. Maybe you're more like the second man. The second man, the pearl merchant, he was actually seeking for treasure. It was his jam. He was going around looking, right? He knew some things about it. He knew there was value to be found, and he knew that not every pearl was the same. Follow the analogy, right? Not every claim to this is what your life needs, this is the philosophy, this is the religion, this is the key to true happiness. We learn through experience that they're not all as valuable as they claim to be. Maybe he'd learned this the hard way, right? Investing in pearls that looked terrific but turned out to be of lesser quality. Perhaps he had suffered loss by sort of being deceived or getting too excited about the way things appeared, and now, he's very critical of first appearances and marketing hype. But he was still seeking. He hadn't written off the whole pearl trade, right? And maybe that's you. Maybe you've been let down before by religion, by the church, by Christians, by pastors. You've been hurt, you've been burnt. Maybe you swore never again. And yet here we are. And you're sitting in a church, you're watching online, and you're hearing this again. And on some level, you're weighing it out. And on some level, I think part of you knows there's got to be more to life than just this surface stuff. There is deeper meaning, and it can't simply be, just whatever a person wishes it to be. I think God is like a flower. I think he's like a unicorn. I think he's like a stuffed bunny the size of a piano. It's like, no. There's got to be something real to this, but everyone claims, and it's not all true. So you're carefully and cautiously searching. You're seeking for the real thing in a market flooded with cheap imitations. I can't convince you, because I sound like every other pearl salesman. But my hope and prayer is that maybe the Holy Spirit's whispering to your heart. Maybe like this pearl merchant, you just knew. He saw that pearl and he's like, that's the one. That's the one I need to pursue if it costs me all the other ones. If I get this, I can stop my search. I've won the pearl game. I just hope that if you sense that I would say it's the voice of the Holy Spirit. You might not recognize it as such. Don't write that off. Don't ignore it. Could you imagine if this pearl guy says, I'm going to think on it, and he leaves, he comes back the next day, it's sold? Kicking himself the whole rest of his life. What we have at stake as we consider the claims of Christ is so much more than a pearl. It lasts for so much more than the rest of our life. It's worth more than we can ever lose in gaining it. Let me pray for us today.